Hey everyone, welcome to Desktop Discourse. Us Mikey, Isaiah, and Vivian here today. We're talking about social media for social change and, using the power of our voices to, gather our opinions and talk about things that are meaningful to us and create meaningful dialogue that, sparks change in this world. So let's get started.
Yeah. So our first question is, what are the pros and cons of using social media as a tool for social change?
I would say a pro is that you get to voice your opinions while also possibly educating others. Um, So like that's something that can be used for. I mean, depending on your platform, your following, and all that kind of stuff, and depending on what you obviously post or retweet or anything like that or share, that can look different. But for the most part, I would say it can help spread awareness or spread information. But at the same time, a con is like it can spread disinformation, and not everyone can be receptive to it, and some people don't want to be challenged on their thoughts or what they've talked about or anything they could have shared. So that's a con for it, depending on the level of ignorance someone may have or unwillingness, I should say, to like not really want to learn. Um, so that can be a con with it as well. Um, so yeah, those are kind of the two things I can think of.
Yeah, I really loved everything Isaiah said. Within social media, there's that understanding that you're reaching so many people that you might have not seen in like 5 years or you haven't seen ever. And knowing that and knowing the communities that have been built has been a positive thing in so many ways. But also, as Isaiah was saying, it can lead to these negative sort of wrong information being spread, sort of communities that can fester all that sort of negativity. So it's important to understand who you're following, who's following you, and getting the information that you need and that's accurate and helpful for you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you. I think that who and how many people can see your post, and like unless you're a private account, you can never really know like how many or who is seeing your post. Um, is definitely a pro and a con for social media, especially in terms of like spreading information, because like you said, it can definitely allow disinformation to have just as wide a scale as accurate information. Our next question is, what are some good examples of using social media for social change that you've seen?
I guess a good example, and I guess it's sort of a general answer, but any post that I see on either Instagram or Twitter, which is where I'm looking more often than not, but posts that are resources for those who might need it or might have not seen it otherwise, and posts that include education that needs to be spread and needs to be learned. I feel like any kind of post revolving around those important topics or relevant topics are very like good, and that's probably the good of social media, is being able to spread that kind of information. So those are the kinds of things that I like to see. And Isaiah's gone. Yay.
Welcome back. Okay. A good example of using social media for social change that I've seen is definitely seeing people like sharing around GoFundMes and stuff for people who need resources, as well as what Vivian said about, just the general sharing of resources. Like, I see a lot of Brave Space Alliance's posts getting shared around, which seems like an excellent resource.
I was saying like infographics. Those are really cool to see because it's easier to digest information, at least for some people. I know for me, I can take it many different ways. Like I can watch videos and I can read it or whatever like that. But sometimes I just don't have the energy for it. Or sometimes it's just a lot to deal with. Like watching an entire video or reading a really long post. But like when you have those slides where it's probably like 4 or 5, maybe even 10 or something like that, where it's just like, bullet points and like just, highlights of, for a certain topic, especially when it's like current day topics, like things that are going on right now. It's like a good way to start the conversation for like myself and for people around me. So I can like, all right, this is a cool topic. Let me go do some more research into it. I have basic knowledge about it. And I can go forward from there. And I've seen like a really big emergence in that recently. So that's really cool. And I follow those pages. So hopefully they can like keep that up and things like that. And I can continue like to get information in that kind of way because it's easier, especially when you're like on the go a lot, when you're dealing with school and all that other kind of stuff. I feel like it's easier for me to just like see a couple of slides, read it, and come back to it later and like research it, like look at their sources or whatever. And this way I'm kind of up to date with it and not relying on one news source or mainstream news source to give me my information. I can use the information that, we all bring to the table as a community, especially like over social media.
And what are some bad examples of social media for social change? Personally, I think very empty or performative activism campaigns. For example, the black square on Instagram that was going around, that was supposed to be like Black Lives Matter, but it didn't really share any information and kind of also ended up really blocking out more information that was trying to be spread, but like couldn't get through that wall of black squares.
Yeah, that was very annoying. Same kind of thing of like the performative activism. That's kind of, I would say, negative because it's just like that people just don't really keep up with it. They're just doing it because it's a trend. Well, not really a trend, but they're just doing it because everyone else is doing it, and they don't want to either seem ignorant to the situation or they just don't want to be left out. There's some people who just post things, just participate in things just because everyone else is doing it, no matter what it is. So that's kind of annoying to see. I mean, like there was even a poll of like support for Black Lives Matter and how it's gone down for every demographic except for Black folks. Because of the performative activism we saw throughout the year, or throughout the summer, really. So like even with the Black Square kind of thing, like that was at the height of the protest, and that was when at least myself and the friends I have here in Chicago as well, but even the rest of the country, like really was protesting like heavily those first few days, and we were using Instagram, Twitter, and whatever other media platforms we had and communication networks to like talk about things that were going on in the city, especially here in Chicago, like what was going on, where to go, where the safe houses were, where you can get resources from, sharing bail funds, exclusively like for trans folks, for queer folks, for Black folks or other people of color, who was going to be supporting, all that kind of stuff. And then that Black Square came up, and then one day I woke up, I'm like, all right, let's figure out where the next protest is. How can I support everyone in the community? How can I support myself? And then all you see on Instagram, at least for the most part, was just this Black Square, and it just said Black Lives Matter, and then that was the hashtag we were using, and that was kind of for like probably 2 days, just no way to get information because it was just Black squares. It didn't really carry over too much on Twitter because I think Twitter is a little different attitude when it comes to a lot of things. So I saw a few Black squares on Twitter, but I was like, it didn't really catch on. A lot of people were like, what the fuck is this? And I had the same kind of reaction before I even saw anyone else's reaction. I woke up and I was on Instagram. I was like, what is this? Like, what is going on? And it was just terrible. And that's just like one example, like Mikey pointed out, that, of what happens when people use performative activism for not the best reasons or spread disinformation.
Yeah, and kind of just going off of everything Mikey and Isaiah have been saying about this terrible textbook example of what not to do of a Black square during those protests. A lot of like what I saw on my feed with that was like it would be white girls from high school would post this black square, and then literally hours later they'd like post pictures of themselves like downtown, like not the protest, downtown, like in their cap and gown or in whatever. And it's like you can just see like the performance, you can see the ignorance, you can see that they're just doing it because they saw like Kylie Jenner do it or someone do it and said, oh, this is what I have to post right now. And that's what becomes so almost infuriating with social media and with the influencers who like do it wrong and like influencers. But it's just so strange that that's what becomes like a mainstream thing when it shouldn't be even considered. Like it's mainstream to like support Black lives when it's like, no, it's not like a trend. It's not something you post and then you post a picture of yourself at the beach, you know what I mean? It's just bizarre to me, and I feel like that will always like going forward be the example of the what not to do, but not just, and like people might hear that and be like, oh, okay, I'll never post a black square, but it's like it's more about the meaning behind that or the intentions behind that or what you're doing because of that sort of thing.
It reminds me of that reaction image where it's like, that's enough activism for one day. So, I mean, just take your time and research what you're doing before you do it. And like, if you're gonna post something, make it mean something instead of just a gesture that doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. What is important to understand when using social media for social change? For instance, mindsets, language, understanding, and we kind of already went into this, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about it.
I would say for me particularly what's useful is like trigger warnings for content. I know right now I've seen a lot on my feed and like starting to read about a lot more like in SARS, like the police brutality that's going on in Nigeria right now, and like they kind of like government sanctioned violence and murdering of protesters, and with that, I mean the videos aren't as clear as, but there's a lot of videos, but like some of them aren't as clear or whatever. But there are footage of people being killed, and for the most part, some folks will retweet it, in the name of awareness. But I think it's important to include like trigger warnings and things like that on content that involves either violence, homophobia, transphobia, murdering, sexual assault, all that kind of stuff that people, can be triggered by. Because it's really important to like just have that up there, because I know like so just TW and that's like trigger warning, or CT, which would be content, or CW, content warning, and that helps because you're like, all right, well I know if I continue to read this post, if I click this, to unblur it, I will see something that could be potentially graphic. So I think that really helps, especially when you're doing stuff around social change, because everything like fighting for your rights and for freedom and all that kind of stuff isn't pretty. And there will be images like that. I mean, there's always been history and images that are not the best and are really graphic. Sometimes you're in a position to, either watch it, look at it, or consume it. Some days you're just not. And in general, you may just not be able to. So I think having trigger warnings and content warnings and stuff like that really helps when you spread this information. Because not everyone gets the information that way, because it doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel pretty sad, and it kind of traumatizes me a little bit when I see that kind of stuff. So it's better to know like, all right, it's a trigger warning. Do I want to continue to read this? If I know what the topic is about, maybe I should go read about it, kind of thing, as opposed to seeing it. So that's something I think about when posting things or keeping things in mind.
I definitely agree about trigger warnings. I think that in addition to that, like we've been saying, research is so important, because you could very easily spread misinformation, and it's very easy to spread misinformation because all you have to do is just like click retweet or like share post. But there is just like a little bit more that goes into being active in social change on social media, because you're not helping anyone if you're spreading wrong or misinformed or misinforming posts. So there's that aspect. And there's also checking out the language that's used in the post, because certain language can be really harmful to certain people to like see, and this kind of goes into the trigger warning aspect as well, because like there are posts where like you'll see really harmful language used for the sake of like informing people, or like giving the facts of what happened, but like it's always really helpful to like warn people before they even have to see stuff like that.
Especially like Mikey and Isaiah have been saying with the trigger warnings, I feel like that is such an important thing to understand when communicating to anyone, and knowing that when you are like posting something that can potentially reach people you don't even know, people you don't know what they've experienced or what they're used to seeing, it's super important to understand that. And going off of that, like social media and like in general, just having that responsibility and understanding that whatever you post, whatever you put out there, it will have an impact on someone. And it doesn't matter how many followers you have, it doesn't matter how many likes you get. Just understanding as an individual that you have that strong, and it's a strong impact, because the media you see is the media you see and consume, and who you become and what you absorb. That what you post, like through resources, through education, someone might need that, and someone might need to see that. And knowing that you kind of have that like power in a sense of spreading this information, you want to make sure you have the responsibility of spreading it correctly, spreading it where people won't take things the wrong way or won't be exposed to things they're uncomfortable with seeing in like a more personal sense, and just protecting people and protecting what they're going through, protecting what they experienced and will experience. But it's super important to understand that you don't really know who's going to see it. Even if you like swipe up on your story and see it, you don't know who it's going to reach in the future. You don't know who's going to see it later. And just knowing you have an impact to change, even in like the slightest absorption of media, people's education, people's resources, because you don't know who's going to need it. So like social media in general, but also understanding the importance of like trigger warnings and content warnings. But yeah.
Thank you both. You guys are so smart, and I'm so happy to be able to talk to you about these things. So our next question is, do you use social media for social change, and what does it look like on a personal level for you? For me, it's usually sharing infographics and sharing folks' GoFundMe posts when people are looking for resources.
I feel like I'm more on Instagram than anything else. So like on that personal level of my personal accounts, not the accounts I run, but just those Instagram, like share a really important infographic, share a really important GoFundMe, and not like, oh, it's so important, like things that need help, things that people need to see, things that people need to confront, who some weird person from high school still follows you and has never heard of this before, you know. That impact on that level, that's always what I'm thinking about. I don't know why. But I don't know. And also just supporting, and like when you have content creators who need that support, who don't usually get the benefit of the algorithm, who don't get the benefit of already having like millions of likes, millions of followers, liking things as soon as you see it helps them like within that algorithm sort of sense. And just like supporting your friends, supporting the creators around you. That's usually what I try to do. Because I don't know, I love the people I follow and the community I've created through those social channels. So I don't know, if anyone listening to this also wants to like kind of do it in that way, I feel like it'll be fun for you.
Yeah, very similar to you guys. I'll share stuff, especially like the GoFundMe's and those infographics. Those are the things I see a lot on my timeline. More GoFundMe's on Twitter and more infographics on Instagram, kind of thing. But also just like sharing information that I have access to, I think is really important. That's usually how I usually use social media for social change. When it's more in the moment stuff, when I'm actively at a place or at a protest or anything like that, and I know people around me are there, or people in the city are there, or whatever, I'll post real time updates like, oh, we're marching up Milwaukee right now, and we're going east, something like that, or like, don't go south, the cops are, creating a blockade. If that's like real time events, if that's what it looks like. But even just like, just reposting things and sharing things, I think is really important. Especially because I know a lot of the people I follow aren't necessarily aware of it. Because like Vivian was saying, like there's some people from high school that still follow me and I still follow them, and like I follow them and like I never see anything like that on their page. I'm not saying I don't know what it means or what it's about, but they're not sharing it. So what can I really know from them? So like sharing that, to have that resources out for folks and have it be available to them, and also keeps me well informed as well. Because when I follow those pages and those media outlets that aren't necessarily mainstream media, it helps me kind of develop my own way of thinking, be informed and understand the different perspectives. So this way I'm not just, in one perspective all the time. I can, kind of see how other folks are thinking and how they're approaching it. And then like when there's ever a disagreement, it's easier to meet in the middle, as opposed to like just arguing and just like going back and forth with each other. It'll be like, all right, I know why you're thinking this. I'm gonna tell you why I'm thinking this. And then we kind of meet in the middle from there. So that's kind of how I use it a lot too. So yeah, just like sharing on my personal page and like spreading as much awareness as I can, usually really helpful in those resources. And when I can, donate, I will, and I've been able to, but doing the best I can to help people as well. So that's it's very similar, I guess, to you guys. So yeah.
So to round out our discussion, do you see social media as an effective method for social change, and why? Personally, I think that it is and can be a really effective method for social change, just because of the platform that is created by social media, and how, like I've mentioned before, you never know who or how many people your post is going to reach. So if you are using it to spread well-researched information, then I think it can be a really effective method for social change.
And kind of going off of what Mikey said, I also totally agree that social media can be such an effective tool for social change. And like when I really think about it, I think about the people who don't get to experience these positive educational communities like in person or within their own household or within their own school system. But social media can be used to give them these lovely communities, these supportive communities, these educational communities, and provide the resources that they need or the support that they need. And just understanding social media in that sense that, like, I know we keep saying it, but you don't know who you're reaching, you don't know who needs to see it, you don't know who is growing because they're seeing it, even if like that person from high school we keep talking about isn't sharing any of this stuff, isn't doing any of this stuff, just based off the media they consume, just by following you, just by tapping your story for like a second. There's change there and there's benefit there, and just seeing it as this tool, it's so effective, and it will probably grow into something totally different in a year. But where we are now, it's definitely helping, and it's definitely doing good, I'd say.
Right. I think social media and the internet as a whole kind of, has it's a really big spectrum of which way it can go. Like it can be used for extreme good and sometimes extreme bad. So kind of just being aware of that and how that can impact others as well is really important. And I mean, some companies and some people have already kind of figured out ways in which to, get to people and manipulate them and play on their emotions and stuff like that because of how powerful social media is. And I think us as people who use it a lot, it's really important that we understand that the reach of our posts and everything like that. Like it doesn't matter, like Vivian was saying, how many likes or comments or whatever you get on it. I mean, if you have a certain account and you can like look at it, you can look at like the insights that you have. Because sometimes I'll look at a tweet that I like tweeted or whatever, and it's something crazy, nothing informative really, like just me rambling on, and it'll probably have like 5 or 6 likes. But if you click like the insights, it'll be like 2,000 impressions, like 2,000 people have seen it. So like that's just the reach of what social media can be for you. And if you're spreading the good information, the right information, and educating people, educating yourself, being able to accept, criticism or challenges from other people when you may post something that's not the best or not using the right language, that's also important. But also some people use it for not so good reasons at all. Like they'll play on fears of people to make them, vote a particular way or make them feel some kind of way or kind of instigate their anger towards a particular topic that's unwarranted. So it can go either way really, but as long as you're aware of the power of it, even though it's become such like a daily part of our lives, like, we use it every day and it's kind of like we don't think about it a lot of the times. Sometimes you just forget like how powerful it can be and the magnitude it can have on people. So I think it's important to recognize that, and then it's easier to post things and be aware of what's going on and the effect that it has, as opposed to just constantly posting things that's probably just not true because you're like, oh, no one's really seeing it, but a lot of people are seeing it. Someone may have screenshotted it and shared it to their group chat, their family group chat, and now everyone's going crazy in that group chat because they think this is real when you just posted it just because. So understanding how it works both ways is really important, but I do think it does a lot of good when used in the right way.
Well, that is all of our questions. Thank you so much for joining us on Desktop Discourse today. Be sure to check out more of our videos, all that fun stuff. Yeah, and we will see you next time.